a man is accused of stabbing Dominique Lucas 33 times to death on a Las Vegas bus. Why did he do such a thing? Well, it would appear that this was a completely random attack on an innocent 30-year-old man. The footage shows the men sitting near each other when seemingly out of nowhere, they suddenly start to argue. Lucas can be heard telling his attacker that he wasn't bothering him just moments before Aaron Cole launches towards him with the knife, stabbing him several times. Lucas is then shown moving towards the front of the bus, pleading with the driver to open the doors. But rather controversially, the driver continues on his route, failing to help him escape this crazed murderer. And Aaron Cole isn't finished yet, as he then proceeds to stab Dominique Lucas a further 20 times, ultimately taking his life. But shockingly, Aaron Cole isn't even the first person to randomly stab somebody to death on a bus for no reason. As in 2008, a diagnosed schizophrenic, Vince Lee, took this one step further when he brutally stabbed, beheaded, and eventually cannibalized another man on a Canadian bus. On that fateful day, Vince attacked McLean while they were travelling on a Greyhound bus to Winnipeg. Witnesses reported that Vince began stabbing McLean in the chest and neck while he was sleeping with his headphones on. The driver pulled over and passengers were evacuated as Lee continued his gruesome attack, but the driver and 2 passengers did attempt to rescue McLean. Unfortunately, however, they were chased away by Vince, who slashed at them from behind the locked bus doors before returning to McLean's body. Surprisingly, on March 5th, 2009, a judge found Vince Lee not criminally responsible for McLean's killing, as Lee had apparently believed God had instructed him to do so and somehow thought he was acting in self-defense. Well, following his sentence, Lee was confined to the Selkirk Mental Health Centre in Manitoba to be treated for schizophrenia. After a year, he was granted the ability to take walks on hospital grounds, and in subsequent years, he was later given increased freedom, eventually leading to his release in 2017, just 8 years after the crime. Vince Lee was granted an absolute discharge with no restrictions under a new identity, and understandably, controversy erupted over the board's decision-making process and its secrecy around the case. But strangely, this incident isn't the first time a crazy Canadian has murdered someone in a bus-related attack, as just last month, a bus driver was charged with murder for deliberately crashing his bus into a Quebec Daycare, killing 2 children and injuring 6 others. 51-year-old Pierre Saint-Amand reportedly stripped nude and began screaming after the incident, and was appropriately charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. He was also charged with attempted murder, 2 counts of aggravated assault, and 4 counts of assault with a weapon causing bodily harm. Witnesses reported that he appeared to be driving at a high speed when he hit the building, and then proceeded to exit the bus, remove his clothing, and scream incoherently. Several parents and bystanders tried to subdue him while rescuing children who were trapped under the bus, and the injured children were transported to St. Justine Hospital for treatment of serious injuries. But unlike some of the children who managed to survive this senseless attack, a schoolboy from the UK wasn't so lucky, as on March 14th of last year, Carlton Tanoué spotted Tyler Hurley waiting at a bus stop on Chadwell Heath High Road while he was travelling on the bus. Unbeknownst to Tyler, Carlton had concealed 2 large zombie knives under his clothing when he approached the boy. Tyler and his friends had recently uploaded a music video to YouTube that mocked some of Carlton's friends, and 2 weeks before the murder, Carlton's associates had actually attempted to retaliate, but on that occasion, Tyler managed to escape unharmed. But on this fateful day, when Carlton saw Tyler waiting at that bus stop, he instinctively jumped off as it stopped and fatally stabbed Tyler with the zombie knife multiple times, taking his life in the process. Carlton then pursued Tyler's friend, but a member of the public called the police to report him, and he fled. Officers eventually found Carlton hiding behind a wall in Burlington Gardens, and he was charged with murder on March the 16th, a fate which also met convicted murderer Darren Vickers. In 1997, 8-year-old Jamie Lavis was groomed and snatched after he boarded a bus in the UK. Shortly after Jamie went missing, in a sick attempt to stay close to the case, the bus driver inserted himself into the Lavis family home. He made public appeals for Jamie's safe return, appearing on TV to speak on the family's behalf. He even stayed with the family, sleeping in their bed, all the while monitoring the police investigation into Jamie's disappearance. But 2 years later, in 1999, Jamie's remains were finally discovered in Reddish Vale, and after further investigation, it was found that Darren Vickers was the culprit. Apparently, he had tricked Jamie into staying on his bus all day before sexually assaulting him, taking his life, and then hiding his body. Vickers was rightfully sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 25 years to serve. However, this date is quickly approaching, and worryingly, the parole board recently conducted a risk assessment and determined that Vickers could potentially be released. Personally, I'd argue that this man is a lost cause and will never be a functional member of society, no matter how long he is imprisoned. An opinion I share for a very similar case which occurred in Malaysia, where a girl's lifeless body was thrown out of a moving bus on the busy streets of Malaysia's capital. She too was sexually assaulted, and the details of this case are truly haunting. 23 years ago, a normal bus journey to work turned into a real living nightmare that took the life of Noor Suzailly, a 24-year-old girl from Malaysia. She had recently returned home after graduating from De Montfort University in the UK, and on the morning of October 7th, Noor was travelling to her job at a private medical centre in Port Klang, where she worked as a computer engineer. That day, she boarded an intercity bus, but little did she know, this would be the last bus ride of her life. A few stops before her final destination, most of the passengers had already departed from the bus, all except for Noor. It was now just her and the bus driver. Unfortunately, Noor never arrived at work that day, as the bus was diverted and she was taken to a different location. One of the witnesses was a man named Devon, an 18-year-old student cycling to a tuition centre. He claimed to have seen a stationary bus on the side of the road and suspected that something was amiss. Devon further examined the scene, and this was when he noticed a topless woman inside the bus, frantically slamming her hands on the tinted window of the passenger door. Once the bus driver detected Devon, he examined the situation and simply shooed him away. After relentlessly chasing after the bus on his bike, Devon then witnessed the bus driver, later identified as Hanafi, dump Noor's lifeless body out of the moving vehicle next to a construction site. The body was then taken to the closest hospital, where a post-mortem revealed that the woman was brutally assaulted. Hanafi had stripped Noor Suzailly, tied her hands with her headscarf, and then decided to rape and sodomize her. After he was finished, Hanafi then used the same scarf to strangle her, and the report showed that the deceased had suffered a staggering 44 injuries to the body, including a broken neck. Hanafi was eventually caught and convicted of murder, but that doesn't quite make this story any easier to digest. I actually mentioned this story in one of my previous videos on Malaysian murders, so if you haven't already, make sure to check it out, as it also includes some other harrowing cases that still remain unsolved to this day.